The vast expanse of deep space stretched infinitely in every direction, cold and unyielding. The starship Erebus drifted silently in the void, its once bright hull now scarred from years of cosmic travel. It was humanity's last hope, a generational ship carrying thousands of passengers and crew in cryosleep, bound for a distant habitable planet after Earth had been declared uninhabitable. Captain Elena Carver sat in the dimly lit command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the ship. The blinking red warnings had started 3 days ago. Critical systems were failing. At first, it was just the secondary oxygen filters, but soon, the ship's AI, Lumen, reported cascading failures across the entire vessel. The life support system was on the brink of collapse. "Captain," Lumen intoned, its voice calm despite the dire situation. "The probability of survival on Erebus is now less than 1%. I advise immediate evacuation." Evacuation. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The Erebus was equipped with escape pods, each capable of supporting small groups for limited periods. But abandoning the ship meant entering the vast emptiness of space with no guarantee of rescue. Elena gathered her senior officers. "We don't have a choice," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "The ship can't sustain us any longer. We evacuate." The announcement sent ripples of panic through the crew. The cryopods containing thousands of colonists were beyond saving, too large and delicate to transport in the escape pods. The crew had to make the impossible decision: save themselves or perish with the mission. Reluctantly, the evacuation began. The crew split into groups, each assigned to an escape pod. The pods were programmed to scatter in different directions, maximizing the chance of encountering a rescue vessel or habitable planet. Elena was among the last to leave, ensuring as many systems as possible were set to stabilize before abandoning the ship. As she boarded her pod, she glanced one final time at the vast interior of Erebus. The ship had been her home, her responsibility, her hope. Now it was a tomb. The escape pods jettisoned one by one, scattering like seeds in the windless vacuum of space. Each pod's propulsion system activated, sending it spiraling away from the failing starship. Inside, the crew members were silent, their faces pale as they stared out at the void. For hours, the pods drifted, their tiny thrusters pushing them toward distant coordinates. Elena's pod was crowded with 7 others, officers and engineers who had served with her for years. The silence was broken only by the hum of the life support systems. Then the first anomaly occurred. The pod's navigation system flickered. A burst of static filled the cabin as the holographic display sputtered. "What's happening?" asked Lieutenant Merrick, his voice tinged with panic. "I don't know," Elena replied, leaning forward to examine the controls. The pod's AI, a basic system far less advanced than Lumen, failed to respond. And then they saw it. Through the narrow viewport, a dark shape emerged from the shadows of space. It wasn't a ship, not exactly. It was an immense, organic-looking structure, its surface rippling like liquid metal. Tendrils extended from its core, curling and uncurling as if tasting the vacuum. The pod shuddered violently as an invisible force gripped it. Alarms blared, and the crew clung to their seats as the pod was pulled toward the structure. Attempts to override the propulsion system failed. They were helpless. The pod was drawn into a cavernous opening in the structure, the tendrils wrapping around it like a predator clutching its prey. Once inside, the alarms ceased. The viewport revealed a strange, luminescent interior, with walls that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly glow. "Where are we?" Merrick whispered, his eyes wide. The pod's hatch opened with a hiss, and the crew was met with silence. Elena unholstered her plasma pistol, gesturing for the others to follow. They stepped cautiously into the alien structure, their boots making soft clicks on the smooth, metallic floor. The air was breathable, though tinged with a strange metallic taste. As they moved deeper into the structure, they encountered what looked like biological machinery. Pulsating, living components integrated seamlessly with metal. It was unlike anything they'd seen. Then came the voices. They weren't audible in the traditional sense. The crew felt them, vibrations in their minds, a chorus of alien thoughts attempting to communicate. "Why do you flee?" Elena froze. The others looked at her, their faces pale. The voice wasn't hers alone. It resonated in all of them. "We had no choice," she said aloud, unsure if the entity could hear her. "You abandoned your cradle," the voice replied, an edge of curiosity in its tone. "And now you trespass in ours." A figure emerged from the shadows. It was humanoid but impossibly alien, its form shifting as if made of liquid and light. Its eyes, or what seemed to be eyes, glowed with an intensity that pierced their souls. "You've intercepted our pod," Elena said, forcing herself to stand tall. "We mean no harm." The entity tilted its head, studying her. "Your kind drifts aimlessly, fragile, desperate. Why should we allow you to continue?" Elena realized they were being judged, much like humanity had once judged the uninhabitable Earth. Her mind raced. "We're not just aimless. We're survivors. We adapt. We learn. If you give us a chance, we can prove our worth." The entity was silent for what felt like an eternity. Then, its form shifted again, dissolving into light that filled the chamber. "Prove it," the voice whispered. And with that, the crew found themselves back in the pod, released into space. The structure vanished, leaving no trace of its presence. As the pod systems flickered back to life, a new coordinate appeared on the navigation display. A system with a habitable planet far closer than any they'd known. The crew stared at the display, the implications sinking in. Someone or something was watching, testing them, and they had passed for now. But as they set course for their new destination, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's greatest challenge was yet to come. The journey to the mysterious coordinates left the crew of the escape pod uneasy. No one spoke of what they had encountered inside the alien structure, but the memory of the entity's shifting form and its cryptic command, "Prove it," weighed heavily on their minds. Captain Elena Carver sat in silence, her gaze fixed on the holographic display that marked their destination. A solar system with a single blue-green planet. Days stretched into weeks as the pod's limited propulsion system pushed them closer. Supplies ran low, and the crew fell into uneasy routines, conserving resources and energy. The tension grew palpable. They had escaped death aboard the Erebus, only to face an uncertain fate on an alien world. Then, the first signs of the planet came into view. The pod sensors picked up breathable atmosphere, liquid water, and vegetation. All the hallmarks of a habitable world. Relief mingled with suspicion. Was this a gift from the alien entity, or another test? As they descended, the planet's surface revealed itself to be a patchwork of dense, luminescent forests, towering crystalline mountains, and vast oceans that shimmered with an unnatural glow. The pod landed softly in a clearing, its systems whirring as it adjusted to the environment. The crew disembarked, their boots sinking slightly into the soft, moss-like ground. "What is this place?" Lieutenant Merrick asked, his voice hushed. "It's alive." He wasn't wrong. The ground beneath their feet pulsed faintly, as if the planet itself had a heartbeat. The trees around them emitted a soft bioluminescent glow, their branches swaying as though moved by an unseen wind. Elena checked her scanner. Atmosphere stable. No immediate threats detected. But she hesitated. "There's a signal. Faint one just ahead." The crew followed the signal through the alien wilderness, the forest growing denser and stranger with each step. Plants seemed to react to their presence, retracting or blooming as they passed. Small, translucent creatures flitted through the air, their forms too alien to categorize. Finally, they reached the source of the signal, a massive structure embedded in the mountainside. Unlike the organic design of the alien vessel they'd encountered, this structure was angular, metallic, and eerily familiar. It bore human markings, faded symbols of the Earth Federation, the organization that had launched the Erebus. "It's impossible," whispered Merrick. "This place, it shouldn't exist." The crew cautiously entered the structure, their flashlights cutting through the dim interior. The corridors were lined with dormant machines and consoles coated in layers of dust. In the center of the largest chamber, they found a terminal still active, its screen glowing faintly with a flickering message. "Project Phoenix, data repository active. Initialize." Elena approached the terminal, her heart pounding. "Project Phoenix?" she murmured. It was a name she hadn't heard in years, a classified program rumored to be humanity's backup plan, an attempt to seed human colonies across the galaxy before Earth's collapse. She pressed a button on the console and the room came to life. Holographic displays filled the air, showing maps of the galaxy, lists of coordinates, and logs from scientists who had worked on the project. The final log sent chills down her spine. If you're reading this, it means you've survived. But survival isn't enough. This planet is part of the experiment, a testing ground to determine humanity's fitness to inherit the stars. You will be observed, judged, and, if necessary, corrected. Succeed and you may continue. Fail. The log ended abruptly, but the implication was clear. The planet wasn't just a refuge, it was a crucible. "Captain," said Merrick, his voice trembling. "Look at this." He pointed to another console displaying a list of names and statuses. Among them were the crew of the Erebus. Some names were marked as active, others as deceased. And then there was another category, pending evaluation. Elena's name was on the list. "This was never about finding a new home," Elena said, her voice cold. "This was about proving we deserved one." The Erebus wasn't just a generational ship, it was part of this experiment. Suddenly, the walls of the chamber began to shimmer, and a familiar voice filled the air. "Prove it," the alien entity said once more, its tone devoid of malice but heavy with expectation. The ground beneath the crew trembled, and the structure began to shift. The planet itself seemed to react, the bioluminescent forests beyond the walls pulsating more brightly. The test had begun. Over the coming weeks, the crew struggled to survive. The planet threw challenge after challenge at them. Violent storms, predatory creatures, and mysterious phenomena that defied explanation. But it wasn't just survival skills being tested. The crew faced moral dilemmas, sacrifices that forced them to confront what it meant to be human. Elena emerged as their leader, guiding the group through each trial with determination and ingenuity. But not everyone survived. Some succumbed to the planet's dangers, while others fell to infighting and despair. Finally, when the crew was reduced to just 3 survivors, the entity appeared again, its form coalescing from light and shadow. "You have endured," it said, its tone almost reverent. "But endurance is not enough. Humanity's strength lies not in its resilience, but in its capacity to build, to create, to unite. You must prove this next." The survivors were left with a choice. Abandon the planet and seek refuge elsewhere, or stay and attempt to build a sustainable colony against impossible odds. Elena made the decision. "We stay," she said. "We build." The entity watched in silence as the survivors began their work, fashioning shelters, harvesting resources, and laying the foundation of what could one day become a new civilization. Slowly, the planet itself seemed to shift, its challenges lessening, its environment adapting to their efforts. In time, the survivors grew into a thriving community. The entity disappeared, its judgment complete. Whether humanity had passed or failed remained unclear, but the survivors understood one thing. Their future would be forged not by escape, but by enduring, creating, and uniting. And in the distant void, others like them might be facing the same test, proving humanity's worth across the stars. Decades had passed since the survivors of the Erebus landed on the strange, living planet. What had begun as a fragile settlement had grown into a thriving society of nearly 1,000 people. Their knowledge and culture shaped by the challenges of the planet and the cryptic guidance of the alien entity. The settlement of Haven had achieved remarkable feats. Energy harvested from the bioluminescent forests powered their structures, and their homes grew from the ground like organic architecture, cultivated rather than constructed. Children learned not just survival skills but the principles of coexistence with their environment and the delicate balance of the world they now called home. The settlers had come to accept that their purpose was part of a larger test, though its exact nature remained a mystery. Until the day the sky changed. It began with a ripple, a distortion in the atmosphere that caused the clouds to swirl and the planet's luminescent forests to pulse erratically. The people of Haven watched in awe and fear as a massive object descended from the heavens, its shape fluid and organic, yet unmistakably mechanical. Unlike the angular wrecks of Earth's past technology or the angular relics of Project Phoenix, this craft seemed alive, its surface rippling like liquid metal. Elena Carver, now an elder and the revered leader of the colony, stood at the edge of the settlement, her silvered hair reflecting the eerie glow of the planet. Beside her was Isla, her granddaughter, a brilliant young engineer who had spearheaded many of the colony's advancements. Together, they watched as the craft landed silently in a clearing not far from the settlement. "Is it them?" Isla asked, her voice trembling. "It has to be," Elena said. "But the question is, why now?" The colony approached cautiously, led by a group of scouts armed with weapons they hoped they wouldn't need. As they neared the craft, its surface began to shift, forming a doorway that emitted a soft, golden light. From the light emerged a figure. It was the entity, but different. Where before it had appeared as a fluid, formless being of light and shadow, it now had a defined shape, a humanoid form, resembling a blend of human and alien features. Its eyes glowed with a familiar intensity, and its voice resonated in their minds as before. "You have grown," it said, its tone unreadable. "But growth is only the beginning. You face a greater choice now." The crowd murmured in confusion. Elena stepped forward, her old but unyielding gaze meeting the entity's. "What choice?" she asked. The entity extended its hand, and the air shimmered with holographic projections. Images of distant planets, alien civilizations, and immense starships filled the space around them. The entity's voice deepened, carrying a weight that silenced the crowd. "You are not the only survivors. Across the galaxy, others like you have struggled and endured. Some have thrived. Others have fallen. You are connected by a thread of purpose, a thread that will determine the fate of your kind." The images shifted, showing scenes of conflict. Alien ships clashing in space, colonies collapsing under unknown pressures, and mysterious structures emitting destructive energy. The entity continued. "The galaxy is not at peace. The tests are not arbitrary. They are preparations. The true challenge is yet to come." Elena felt the weight of its words but pressed on. "What do you mean? What challenge?" The entity's form brightened, its light enveloping the crowd. "A force beyond understanding stirs at the edge of existence, consumes, assimilates, and destroys. You call yourselves survivors, but survival alone will not stop it. To face what comes, you must unite with each other, with those who have passed their trials, and even with those who have failed. The projections shifted again, showing what appeared to be an ancient archive. A star map etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with meaning. The entity gestured toward it. This is your map. It will guide you to others, allies, knowledge, power. But the choice is yours. Remain here, safe, isolated, or embrace the path to the stars and risk everything for the greater whole. The entity stepped back, waiting silently as the colony erupted into debate. Many were afraid of leaving the safety of Haven, unwilling to risk their fragile peace. Others, led by Isla, argued that humanity could not ignore such a calling, that their survival meant nothing if they turned their backs on the galaxy. Elena listened to every voice, weighing the risks and the hopes of her people. When the debate subsided, she spoke. "We didn't survive the Erebus just to hide," she said, her voice strong despite her years. "We came here to prove we were worthy of more. If this is the next step in that journey, we cannot turn away. We will take the map. We will seek the others. And we will face whatever comes." The crowd fell silent, then erupted into cheers of determination. The entity's form flickered, and its voice carried a note of approval. "Very well. Your path begins now. May your thread strengthen the tapestry." The craft opened further, revealing the star map embedded in a console. The settlers worked to integrate it with their own systems, their primitive technology enhanced by the guidance of the alien design. Within months, they had built their first interstellar ship, a vessel named Odyssey, constructed from the materials of the planet and powered by the bioluminescent energy they had harnessed. When Odyssey launched, it carried not just a crew, but the hopes of an entire civilization. As the ship ascended into the stars, Elena watched from the surface, knowing her time was nearing its end but feeling at peace. Humanity had taken its first step into the greater unknown. And in the silent depths of space, something watched, waiting to see whether the fragile thread of humanity would weave a stronger tapestry or unravel entirely. The years passed, and the survivors of the Erebus evacuation forged a fragile existence on the mysterious planet. What began as a desperate attempt to survive evolved into a determined effort to build something enduring. The luminescent forests became a source of sustenance and wonder. The strange crystalline mountains yielded rare materials for tools and shelters, and the glowing oceans provided both a lifeline and an enigma. But the planet was far from tamed. Its challenges grew more intricate, almost deliberate, as if it were aware of their progress. Storms intensified when they built too high. Predators adapted to their defenses. Crops flourished only when cultivated with precision, suggesting the planet demanded not exploitation, but harmony. The survivors learned to listen. They abandoned their old ways of extracting and consuming, instead embracing a symbiotic relationship with their environment. They planted forests instead of clearing them, redirected rivers instead of damming them, and built homes that blended seamlessly with the land. Slowly, their small colony began to thrive. But the entity, unseen since its cryptic challenge, wasn't gone. It lingered, watching. One night, Elena Carver sat by the edge of the glowing ocean, her gaze lost in its iridescent waves. She was older now, her once sharp features softened by time and the weight of leadership. The colony had grown, new children had been born, and the survivors had started calling their settlement Haven. Yet the uncertainty remained. Were they proving themselves, or were they still teetering on the brink of failure? The water stirred, and a shape rose from its depths. It was the entity, its fluid, light-filled form shifting as it approached her. Elena stood, her hand instinctively brushing the hilt of the crude blade she carried. not a weapon of aggression, but one of necessity. "You've returned," she said, her voice steady despite the years of questions that burned inside her. "You have learned much," the entity replied, its voice resonating not in the air, but in her mind. "But your journey is not complete." Elena frowned. "What more could you possibly want from us? We've survived. We've built. We've worked together. Isn't that enough?" The entity's form shimmered, its light intensifying. "Survival is a beginning, not an end. Building is a foundation, not a purpose. What drives you, Elena Carver? What drives your people?" The question struck deep. For years, they had focused on surviving, on proving their worth to a mysterious force that held their fate in its hands. But why? What did they want beyond survival? "I want a future," she said, the words spilling out before she could think. "Not just for us, but for the generations to come. I want humanity to matter, to create, to be more than we were before." The entity was silent for a long time, its light dimming until it was almost invisible. Then it spoke again, its tone heavier, more deliberate. "Your people are not alone in this test. Across the galaxy, others face trials of their own. Some succeed. Many fail. Each success brings the greater whole closer to understanding." Elena's breath caught. "Are you saying this isn't just about us? Your species is young, but not unique. The universe observes, measures, and learns from each thread in its tapestry. You are a thread, a fragile one, but vibrant." The entity extended a tendril of light toward her. In its glow, she saw visions. Other planets, other species, each struggling in their own way. Some resembled humanity, others were utterly alien, their forms and trials incomprehensible. All of them striving, proving themselves, fighting for their place in the cosmos. When the visions faded, the entity said, "Your future will depend not just on what you build here, but on how you connect with the greater whole. Continue to grow, to learn, and one day, you may join the network of those who endured." With that, the entity dissolved into the ocean, leaving Elena standing alone with the weight of its words. The next morning, she gathered the colony and told them what had transpired. They debated what it meant, whether it was a warning, a promise, or something in between. But one thing was clear. Their purpose was no longer just to survive. It was to become a part of something larger. The years turned into decades. The colony thrived, expanding into a small civilization. They uncovered more remnants of Project Phoenix, scattered ruins that hinted at a grander plan for humanity. They even began to harness the strange, bioluminescent energy of the planet, building technology that merged seamlessly with the environment. One day, as they ventured deeper into the planet's unexplored regions, they found something astonishing. Another ship, much like the Erebus, half buried in the crystalline mountains. Its markings were unfamiliar, but the skeletons inside were undeniably alien. It was a grim reminder that not every species passed the test. But humanity pressed on. They established a beacon, broadcasting a signal into the void, a call to any others who might still be searching, still striving, still proving their worth. Then, on the 100th anniversary of their landing, the beacon received an answer. A ship appeared in the sky, sleek and unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't alien, but it wasn't entirely human either. Its design blended elements of both, as though it came from a future where humanity and the galaxy had become one. As the ship descended, its markings became clear: United Alliance of Haven. The descendants of the colony had succeeded, their message traveling not just through space, but through time. And as the doors of the ship opened, Elena's legacy, humanity's legacy, stepped into the next chapter of its journey, ready to embrace the infinite possibilities of the stars.